Hey guys, Mike with Long Range to the Lilies here today to talk to you guys about match directing and trying to focus more on things that I see that good match directors do and less on kind of the negative what bad match directors do. Some of that will come out, but again, I just want to kind of focus on what good match directors do. So the first thing I want to talk about with good match directors is they run a safe course of fire. They run a safe match. I think it's one of the primary responsibilities, or actually the fundamental responsibility of a match director, is we're doing an event that involves firearms. So having an eye for safety, be it the route that competitors are walking on, where they place their rifles, the rules that they're going to enforce with regards to chamber flags, when you can load and make ready your weapon system, stuff like that. And all that is different from series to series to series, but I think it's something that match directors absolutely need to focus on. Another thing that great match directors do is they care about growing the sport and they care about catering to the mid-pack or the newer shooters. I think that there are some match directors out there who will base their event or their course of fire around the top guy. Like I've heard it before, like I don't want the top shooter in the world, whoever that may be, opinions vary, to show up and to clean my course of fire. And they will design a tough course of fire to ensure that that doesn't happen. And what ends up happening when you do that is the bottom half of the field, especially that guy, that new shooter, a guy or a girl, excuse me, that new shooter gets just destroyed. They don't hit anything, they're miserable. It becomes this impossible thing for them and they never come back. Especially if you're talking about people that have traveled to get to your match. Anymore with gas prices, airline prices, hotels, just anything, it's expensive. I mean, you're talking like a minimum of $1,000 if you're traveling to a match and you're staying overnight. So if you're trying to grow the sport, the base of the sport is that mid-pack and below shooter. You need to design your course of fire to where that person is having fun. I think that a good rule of thumb is if your top guys are shooting like 90 to 95%, your bottom guys should be getting somewhere at least 25 to 30%. And if you can find that balance, I think you're appealing to everybody. Now, is it as simple as what I'm making it say? Or making it sound like? No, there's a lot of other factors. Weather plays a part of it, the terrain, the heat, all of that stuff factors into people's scores. But I think that there are a lot of match directors out there who take this kind of stuff into account. For example, one of the first match directors that I heard of that really, really analyzed this stuff, and I'm not saying he's the only one by any means, is Tate Streeter. He would look at target size relative to wind forecasts and miles an hour, and he would see like what the average shooter would hit versus what the top shooter would hit, and he would put a lot of thought and effort into that, and it's something that I try to replicate in my matches. Again, I think that it's not the match director versus the shooter. Your responsibility as a match director is to provide a level playing field that is fair, safe, and gimmicky free, and then just let the shooters sort themselves out. Like the best shooters will always be able to separate themselves from the field, whether it's a hard match or an easy match. The best shooters in the world are always going to rise to the top, and it's just our job as match directors to facilitate that, not to take a me versus the shooter approach to things. So while we're talking about this course of fire, I think that designing a course of fire that's fair, which we've already covered, designing a course of fire that is takes match flow into account. For example, I've been to matches where you'll have a really long hard stage, immediately followed by like some quick stages and then a big long hard stage. Especially if they run different times, it tends to create these log jams. So I think good match directors design a course of fire and a travel path with match flow in mind, and they think about that as they're designing their stages. When you're designing the course of fire, I think good match directors analyze what they're trying to test on each stage. So for example, there's only so many ways you can challenge a shooter. You can do it with distance, you can do it with position, you can do it with time, and you can do it with target size. And I think that there are some MDs that try to do all those things on one stage, and then there are better MDs. A better choice in my mind is you pick which one of those you want to test, and you design your course, that particular stage around testing that thing, and then your next stage will test something different. And then I think you shouldn't combine more than 2 or 3 of those things at once, especially not all 4. Maybe if it's like an AG Cup style, super hard match, then maybe. But as far as, again, going back to that catering to the new or mid-pack shooter, I think that your course of fire shouldn't include all 4 of those. Another thing that I've noticed that good MDs do is they proof their course of fire, either themselves personally, or they have somebody they know and trust who's not going to compete proof and or validate their course of fire. I think that there's a lot of things that come out when you go through the motions of actually proofing and proofing and validating the course of fire that don't necessarily come out when you're just out there and you're laying on a rock and you're like, yeah, here, and then, I'll put targets over there. I think once it's set up, I think you really should send somebody through there, if not yourself, because there's a lot of little things that you find out. They're like, oh, that's not going to work because of this, or man, there's a thorn bush right there that they're going to end up laying in, or oh, I didn't think it was a problem, but I can't see the target from these positions. And then worst case scenario is you find out like a stage is dangerous, or it puts people at risk of doing something dumb that maybe you didn't foresee. Can you proof and validate and stop every shooter from coming up with some weird, wacky way of doing things? No, but I think even just the basic act of proofing or validating your course of fire will go a long ways towards eliminating a lot of those things. Another thing that I think that good match directors do after their course of fire, or after their match in general, is reach out for feedback. So I see this pitfall a lot in match directors. I've definitely seen it a lot in what I would call bad match directors. And again, this isn't pointed at anybody else. Is shooters are going to be reluctant to come up to you and say like, hey man, I thought this was really fucked up or really jacked up. Like, it was messed up. I hated it. Your match is the dumbest match ever. I'm never doing this again. Generally what you see, especially amongst newer or mid-pack shooters, those guys we're trying to keep in the sport, is they just don't show up again. But they do go tell their buddies how much they hated it. So I think as a match director, you have to be very, very proactive about reaching out for feedback and insisting that shooters give you feedback. Like, hey man, like what'd you think of the match? 99% of the time, oh man, it was awesome, thanks, I'm really glad you had me here, like thanks for doing this. Those are all the things that shooters are going to automatically regurgitate. But I think you have to go one step further. If you genuinely care about getting better, about running better matches, you have to reach out and be like, no man, like I need you to give me something I can improve on. What's one thing you didn't like and why? And then sometimes when you dig, you start to find these things out, and then you can start fixing things. And maybe you only hear 1 or 2 things a match, and then every match you run, you make things 1 or 2 little things better. That is how you improve a match. That is how you improve your experience, which is what we're doing. We're providing an experience for this shooter. We're offering a service. I think that now especially, there's so many matches out there where what we're going to start to see is places that have traditionally held matches that have always had good attendance. If they haven't evolved or become better, you're going to start to see your attendance drop off as those shooters migrate to other places. Some venues are more fortunate in this than others, in that they're the only venue around for several hours of driving. Other places are surrounded by venues, and the competition's going to start to be fierce because MDs want to run matches. Which brings me to my next point, is that you have to evolve as a match director. If you're fortunate enough to own your own land and own your own range, and you have the same targets up all the time, and you're running the same stages, and every time you show up and shoot a match it feels like deja vu, you're going to evolve into that, what I talked about earlier with evolution and needing to evolve as a match director. Didn't really word that great, but whatever. And people are just going to stop showing up. if you're not putting in the work to evolve and to challenge shooters and to come up with new and interesting courses of fire, they're just going to stop showing up. So a couple things I want to talk about, and I really wish that I had said it back earlier, is under safety, is a good match director will have emergency plans. They will brief to the shooters what the emergency plan is for any sort of catastrophic incident, where the casualty collection point is, who's coordinating the emergency response. Those kinds of plans you need to have, and you need to brief your shooters. That way everybody who is at that match knows what to do in the event we have an emergency. Where the medical kits are, how we're getting somebody to an ambulance if we're in a remote location. All those things come up, which kind of leads me into the last thing I want to talk about, which is good match directors communicate in a timely manner. They put out good, accurate information that they're not having to redact and fix later, and they put it out on time so shooters get it and they're not reacting last minute. I know that there was a match last year where the round count for the match didn't come out to like the Wednesday of the week of the match, when I was already on the road and it had already changed. That is frustrating as a shooter. I think that if you don't know, where check-in is, what time check-in starts, what time rounds are going down range, like what the 0-day procedures look like, all that stuff, when you're showing up, you're trying to figure out, if you can't put that out in an accurate, timely timely manner, like that's an issue. Your shooters should show up and they should not have any questions on what's going on and what to do. And that time, especially that 0 shoot sign-in day, is the most critical, because you haven't had a chance to get everybody together to brief them as you would, before rounds are going down range. Let me just check my list and make sure I didn't miss anything here. So, yes, one last thing. I apologize. This is the last thing actual is match directors have an additional responsibility to provide a return on investment for sponsors. Guys, if we continue to stand there with our hat in our hands and say, hey, sponsors, send me free stuff so I can give it, away to shooters, there's actually very little ROI in that. What you can do is you can get your shooters and you can stress it like, hey, if you take something off this prize table, please reach out, thank the sponsors, make a post about it, whatever. Show to these sponsors that there is some value, that word is getting out, that when they donated whatever it is that they gave, a scope, a rifle, even down to some little knickknack, that there's a value to giving that away, and it's not just charity. I think that we've really stretched these sponsors thin. There's so many matches right now, and I know sponsors are starting to do the math on like, all right, well, if we send stuff to this guy, we always get, 1 million thank you emails, and there's always posts about it highlighting our product and blah, blah, blah. Or we send it to this match director and we never hear anything again. Well, as more and more matches start showing up, they're going to start leaning towards the guy that's giving them an ROI, or return on investment, on their charity giving to the sport. Because guys, they could be selling this stuff. They don't need to give it away. Especially if we're talking about some of these smaller companies that have much tighter budgets with their marketing budget. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that there's some good information in there for match directors or future match directors, or maybe even existing match directors that just haven't looked at it in a while. I know I really enjoyed the reward that comes with running a match. Being a match director is very rewarding on just a personal level, knowing that you're giving back to your community and you're providing a fun experience to the shooters. So guys, if you like what you see, feel free to like and subscribe and share. Hit me up in the comments if you have any comments or things that I missed, or if you feel strongly about something and you want to argue about it, feel free to hit me up for that too. I always enjoy those conversations. So guys, we hope to see you out there in a match real soon, and thanks for watching.